Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Contemporary Issues Adult Sunday School class. We are warming up today. It's a frosty 5 degrees here in Denver. It's warming up. It was 0 this morning.
-4.
-4 when you got up. Very good. So we have 10 people in class and might have more on Zoom than we do in the room. We are glad to have everybody here and looking forward to good discussion and presentation by Ron Puning today on the book Good Reasonable People and why we are dangerously divided in America on religion, politics, and how we can understand that. So our usual announcements, welcome Zoomers. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. We are recording this for future playback on YouTube. And please be kind to our speaker today. Because we are talking about politics in part today, and we like to remind to be kind in our church setting. It's part of our calling. And anything else in the news? Tomorrow is the big day, Martin Luther King Day and Donald Trump Day, Inauguration Day. Indoors there too. I'm glad I didn't plan to go there and then have to cancel my plans to be outside in inauguration because it's not. Any other things anybody like to announce? Things going on?
I think it's noteworthy that they released 3 of the hostages this morning.
Oh, did they, Susan? I hadn't heard that yet. Of the Gaza hostages. Good. So that began. Good. That continues. Our church here is doing a all-church read about the Dietrich Bonhoeffer book, The Cost of Discipleship, and there are copies in our little book alcove. Anybody wants to pick some of those up, and there is a online Zoom class at 6:30 tonight. Rev Jerry leads. It's been quite interesting. This will be the second week tonight.
Does he want you to sign up for that?
Yes, you can sign up online.
Yeah,
He'll send you the
So you
website,
have to sign up to get the link. Is what we're saying.
Yes.
or I'll send it to you if you don't get it. No. Okay. I'm going to share screen here and Ron will have
There we go.
A little slideshow to go along, and want to welcome also our first-time visitor here, Beth. Are you from here, Beth, or
From North Carolina.
North Carolina? Nice
Oh.
to have you here.
Beth was on Camino with us.
On the El Camino walk in Spain.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mason and Colleen did a good presentation
Oh,
for
yeah,
us about
we
that.
had a good time.
Yep. Okay. All right, Ron, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Getting out on this cold morning. Again, we're continuing with the book Good Reasonable People by Keith Payne, and it's quite excellent in terms of getting a better understanding and digging deep into why people believe what they do and some of the divisions we have in this country and what's caused those. And hopefully we get to the last slide where we talk about how to maybe start to change somebody's mind on something, effective ways that work and don't work. There's a picture of Richard Feynman there next to Neil Armstrong. They were on a committee together to investigate the Challenger disaster. And there's a statement of Feynman's that I throw around all the time, which is, you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So I'm always encouraging people to look deep into themselves to try to understand better why you're thinking certain things, your beliefs, even your day-to-day activities, whether you're irritating people or making the world better or some of each. So let's get going. The second slide, one of my favorite comic book covers that covers today, The Big Freeze, Captain Cold versus the Flash there. So that's kind of today's weather. Let's jump right in slide 3. Okay, last week we talked about your PIMS. What's your PIMS? That's your psychological immune system. And in essence, there's a picture there of an artist's rendition of the Siege of the Alamo. There's also a little book called Defending the Realm on the Battle of Britain. But your psychological immune system is doing just that. It's kind of defending the realm. It's protecting your psyche and your psychological well-being. It's defending you against different ideas that come in, particularly those ideas that contrast with what your beliefs are. And as an example, there's a green statement and a red statement. And this is what a person who is a strong Trump supporter, how their psychological immune system might kick in. If one statement, the one on the left there, the leader of my group is lying to try to stay in power despite losing the election. And that will draw a counter argument in somebody that's
Is it up as far as we go?
No, he's taking it down.
Oh,
Somebody
it's
needs
like
to
muffled.
silence. We
It's
can hear you talking.
muffled.
Next one, the other statement, the leader of my group,
Ron, can you say that again? I missed it because of the talking.
okay,
Can you?
We'll draw,
Please mute your audio.
just the red part.
okay, the red one. Okay, the red one is when one person hears the leader of my group is lying to try to stay in power despite losing the election. With one person who has certain beliefs, they'll immediately start forming counter arguments to that statement in their mind. Now, if we go over to the green part and see, if the statement is made, the leader of my group is defending us against the enemy's attempt to steal the election, that'll elicit affirming thoughts in some people. So again, we find if your identity, if your personal identity and your strong feelings are involved in something that you hear or something that's said to you, your psychological immune system will kick in. Call it like a virus attacking you. It comes in and says, hey, I don't believe that, or I don't like that statement. And so your PIMS kicks in. So that's what, again, the author calls your psychological immune system. Let's jump to the next slide. We also want to review number 4, the big words cognitive dissonance. This means kind of an inner conflict. And we experience conflict detection and cognitive dissonance when there's a couple ideas that we're embracing within our own thoughts that conflict badly. And some people walk around carrying, in some cases, 2 central tenets in their mind that cannot possibly both be true. But they learn to live with it and it doesn't bother them. A quote I like, that's the Prince of Denmark there from Hamlet, an artist's illustration. And the second most quoted line from Hamlet is, something's rotten in the state of Denmark. Now, that does not refer to the conflict over Greenland right now. but it does refer to cognitive dissonance, where the prince there has realized that there's something seriously wrong in the play Hamlet and is undergoing a cognitive dissonance. There's a little cartoon, shows a wolf in sheep's clothing, and someone is experiencing cognitive dissonance. So again, it's a feeling of inner conflict when we realize things are not adding up, a logical contradiction, and our scam warning starts flashing. You've probably gotten some emails that are scams or a phone call that's a scam, and you listen to it for a minute, and then you start to realize something doesn't sound right here. Okay, good example. Say you've got a roommate, and they start consistently coming home in the wee hours of the morning, and you find a huge duffel bag of $100 bills in the back of the closet. And you think your roommate is, super honest but now you would start to say, something doesn't add up here. You shouldn't have a bowling bag full of $100 bills stuffed in the closet. We better look at this. Okay, that's cognitive dissonance. All right. We make the statement, a good attorney can concoct an argument for almost any position. Reasoning is often exercised not to find the truth, but to win friends and influence people and increase our status about the groups we care about. So again, our PIMs will often kick in just to protect that inner thought we have, our inner feeling and our inner beliefs. We often rationalize away arguments we don't want to hear. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the lesson, about how we come up with some fabulous rationales. There's the statement there in that third bullet. I know what I want to end up believing, so I'll keep shuffling ideas around until they fit my desired conclusion. You formulate an argument. And a lot of people do this with Bible verses. They'll say, here's what I want to come up with. And they sort through the Bible trying to cherry pick pieces that they can put together in certain orders to get to the conclusion they want to hear.
It's like the creationists deciding that they shuffle things around until they come up with their creation.
Yeah.
A young earth motif.
Okay. This next slide, Stephen Cole Barrett made the statement. If this is going to be a Christian nation that doesn't help the poor, either we have to just pretend that Jesus was just as selfish as we are. We've got to acknowledge that he commanded us to love the poor, serve the needy without condition, and then admit we just don't want to do it. So that's kind of an expression of cognitive dissonance. Here's a bumper sticker that I haven't seen too often, but it shows truth gobbling up Darwin. Has anybody seen that one on the back of a car? Except the problem is, everything I've read about Darwin is the man was sincere, honest, and almost all of his findings were right on. He had to make some adjustments here and there, but he certainly wasn't hiding the truth. And so I felt that bumper sticker, that decal, was it was the opposite of what truth is. He had found the truth, and there's a group, unfortunately, many Christians who don't want to listen to him.
Curious though, how they have Darwin in the fish symbol.
Yeah. Well, it's got a foot on it.
Oh, is it?
Showing implying that fish made it onto land, which we know they did, evolution-wise. Okay, next one. Okay, in the book, there was a investigator by the name of Phil Converse, not to be confused with Converse tennis shoes, but he studied and he found that a lot of people that are politicians or journalists, like Steve, and those high in political knowledge, which quite frankly, a significant number of the people, if not everybody in this class, rates, I think, pretty high on political knowledge, shows generally genuine ideology, consistent backing of certain tenets and propositions. But he found the general out there in the public, and I'm not sure I agree with his 85% number, but he said a very high percentage of folks are inconsistent on positions. In other words, they'll put a thing out there like a ballot measure and put it on the ballot in 2020, and a person will vote yes, and then put it on the ballot a year later and switch. So he found that a tremendous number of people on issues flop around. They're flip-flopping all the time. They don't lock into a centralized tenet. But what he did find is that people are very consistent on their group, he calls it coherence. People are highly coherent and consistent when it comes to their social groups and their political partisanship. Next slide. There's Al Bundy and Married with Children. He formed a group of his beer drinking buddies called No Man, and their objective was to push back on the feminine members of their circle. But again, he found most people do not have a coherent, consistent set of principles or opinions. Their leader can flip them from one position to another, but their group loyalties and the desire for their group to dominate other groups is pretty darn consistent. And once people identify with a group, we could call it a group, a tribe, their PIMS, psychological immune system, kicks in to assure no matter what happens, with confidence they and their groups are good and reasonable people. And there we have an artist illustration of Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon. Yeah. So their defense mechanisms, this is just one example, will kick in really powerfully strong to defend that belief that they put very, very close to their heart. Next one. Okay. We adopt beliefs to make a sense of how we're feeling. In 2008, Barack Obama made a gaffe, but it was true, when he said people of Midwestern industrial towns hit hard by job losses tend to cling to guns, religion, or antipathy to people who aren't like them as the way to explain their frustrations. People then adopt political beliefs to make sense of how they feel and why they're in the position they're in. Makes sense. And we often stand aghast and think, how can they believe that? But he says a better question to ask is, what function is this belief serving for them at the moment? What function is this belief that they're grabbing, they're holding so firmly? Why are they doing it? Okay, here comes a slide that may offend a few people, but I think it's consistently, I think it's logically consistent. This is a typical engineering diagram. I call it logic to exonerate. Suppose a certain person, for a certain person, there is what I call incontrovertible evidence of multiple serious moral criminal level failures. Okay? And assume the evidence is incredibly powerful, and there's a lot of it. Well, your PIMS can kick in. Number one, the first one thing you can do is refuse to examine the evidence. I'll draw an example here. In the case of Mr. Donald, there was a book written, Oath and Honor, by Liz Cheney. There's a copy of it over there on the shelf. And if you read the book, you'll find it's not a bunch of emotional statements. It's factual, consistent evidence. And I asked one person, don't you think you ought to read this to just, see what the case is? I said, oh no, she's a bad, evil person. I won't reread that.
She is.
Yeah, not that, so that's one way you can defend yourself, is to just flat out refuse to look at the evidence whatsoever. Next one, 2, concoct bizarre or unbelievable rationale to deny the evidence. And I think I gave an example in an earlier class of a trial Alice was on, and
I was on the jury.
yeah, and she wasn't the accused. Good point. She was not the accused. But this guy, there was an anklet he was forced to wear as a released prisoner, and it put him at all these crime scenes in the Littleton area, exact place, exact time. They had DNA, and
They had photos of the women.
yeah, it was just, and yet there are people who, given that much evidence, can push it away and deny it. that wasn't me, that was an alien clone with exactly the same DNA. And he was out there doing that, you know, that kind of an argument. So you can either refuse to examine evidence. I won't look at anything that doesn't agree with my position, or if there's a solid, really solid argument against me, I can concoct these bizarre or unbelievable rationales. I was kidnapped to the land of Oz. Or the third one, and we're seeing this today, decide that the massive evidence of corruption does not disqualify this person from my supporting them. And we're seeing this with Donald. We can 3.2 claim that God has chosen and anointed this person. Therefore, I don't care what they do. Or the other 3.1, which I think is the one I think I've seen the most, claim that power seizure and the upside of this leader outweighs all else. I don't care what they've done, what they've said, how they've acted. The good that I think they're going to deliver for me outweighs.
BDBR, bland denial of blatant reality.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Ron, I actually heard Marjorie Green compare Donald Trump to Jesus.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Then we're seeing too now the other side that people are saying Biden and Harris, despite their failings, you know, we thought they were much better than the other choices. So it happens on both sides, of course, maybe not to the same degree, but we look at the lesser of two evils and try and make the best choice we can.
Okay, but again, it shows the rationale. There's a scene out of The Godfather that I love. Backup one, and I've got the quote here. The quote: "Admit what you did, Carlos. Only don't tell me you're innocent because it insults my intelligence. It makes me very angry." And that's a feeling I have. When a person goes to a point where they just make, you know, ridiculous claims, I can't take it. And I feel like the Godfather there. Next slide. Okay. We can, of course, apply the same thing to denying things like human-caused climate change. We can refuse to examine the evidence, concoct bizarre rationale, decide that the evidence is or the third one, simply decide that the evidence of human-caused climate change is inconsequential compared to my wealth, lifestyle, and what I enjoy. We're essentially saying, I don't care. This course of denying it meets my needs, and so therefore I'm going to embrace it. Next one. All right. They've done a study on college students. We're going to talk now about some of the groups in society. And here's where the author was a little bit inconsistent, but he said a lot of students have been studied. He said they generally do not become more liberal in their policy views during their years in college. They show up holding these views. But then he says, but they do show political identities are like accents. They drift toward your peer group, not your teachers. He does say that it's not usually a case in college of the teachers and the professors moving students into a certain political persuasion, but it's more of their peer group. They did say if you assign a student, they've done a study, to a more liberal or a more conservative roommate, their roommate will tend to drift that way a little bit.
Yeah.
Drift that way more toward the roommates and their real close circle. Next one. College does not move group-based identity. It says, college students and graduates score much lower on measures of racial and gender bias. In other words, they have shown that college tends to knock down biases against other people of other tribes. people that aren't like you. As they say, as college students become more aware of systematic racism, they're less likely to see racial inequality as a result of Black people's failings and more likely to support gender equality. College does tend to make people more concerned about group-based inequalities, which are the main driving forces behind political identities.
Do you remember that movie we watched, The Debaters?
The great debaters.
The college kids, and they were taught to take stands, pros and cons, and it basically came down to racial profiling. Little Texas college, and they went to, was it Harvard? And debated and won the national debate. It's an amazing movie.
It's a true story,
It's
yeah.
a true story, so.
What's the name of it?
The debate, Great Debaters or the Debaters or something
Yeah.
like that.
Denzel Washington.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember that.
It's
Yeah.
a great movie, Special Elements Coal Mines.
Okay, next slide. Educational effects. The second bullet there, the less factual information people know about the history of segregation and discrimination, the less information they have, the less they've been taught about actual factual things like the Tulsa massacre, what happened in Wilmington, North Carolina in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The less they believe today's racial inequalities are due to structural factors, and the more they believe it's a thing that's due to personal feelings. So I've worded that badly. What I should say is they found that when you educate people about things that really happened, lynchings, injustices, they do tend to change and realize that, hey, maybe I need to rethink how I look at the other races and other people. And again, I recommend the book, An Easy Burden by Andrew Young, a book I brought in last week or so. They say the voting difference between highly educated and less educated white people can now be fully accounted for by differences in their views of racial equality. Interesting. When people with less, okay, yeah, let's move on, or yeah, let's jump to the next slide. Here was an article about, and this fellow lived in East Tennessee. A white teacher taught white students about white privilege. It cost him his job. I think it was in Bristol, Tennessee, or somewhere fairly close to that. But he put a little too much, shall we call it wokeness, or whatever, into his teachings, and they fired him. Several state legislatures are banning schools from teaching about history, slavery, and race. This is happening in some of the states now pretty powerfully. Like Florida's had it, and some other states are moving that direction too. I think Oklahoma is struggling with it, Texas is struggling with it, and there's some other places.
When you've got the facts in front of you, how can you ignore it? I mean, like, looking at my history, digging back, my family was Confederate, and I came to find out that some of my great grandfather owned slaves. And it's listed. I cannot ignore the fact that this is what happened. And it's, for a long time, I felt guilty when I discovered that, and then I realized I didn't specifically have anything to do with it, but your thinking changes, when you
Alice, I think that's why they don't, I think that's why they don't want to teach it, is because they don't want their kids to feel guilty. They don't want them to be emotional about it.
maybe.
But which is ridiculous. I can remember being younger and hearing about war and things like that. And I don't know that I was old enough yet to really comprehend that it should make me feel guilty, but that's what they're worried about, is they're protecting the kids from stuff like that. And they need to know that.
But they need to know the
Sure they
facts,
do.
and that's,
Yeah.
this country is not gonna move forward if people don't look at the facts and the truth and deal with it.
I think that's the.
Sorry, I
reason
didn't mean
for
to
the-
interrupt.
No.
It's, this stuff always, brings it up.
And there have been a few cases where teachers have gone too far in teaching the history and given their personal opinion about you should feel guilty, white people should make reparations. And then the conservatives have used those few cases to push the pendulum too far the other way about not teach, then let's don't teach anything about slavery and racism if we're gonna make our kids feel guilty about it.
A little bit of guilt might do you some good though, too.
That's true.
All right. Back to 15, yeah. They do tend to say that students tend to change from thousands of small lessons and social interactions that happen daily on the college campuses. And also reading books and social media that challenge the old culture and thought. But it's the most valuable thing they said about the college campus was simply getting the students to mix and interact and associate and mix with people of other tribes and denominations and whatever.
Which, Ron, is one reason why usually conservative Christians want to send their kids to conservative Christian schools and not state schools that are full of all kinds of different
Or
And
even homeschool.
and homeschool, right?
Yeah, you don't want them to get contaminated.
No, that's exactly right.
Or think for themselves.
Think for themselves.
Okay, next one. Okay, here's where we take a swipe at country folk, and I'm not trying to take a swipe at country folk. But they do show that right now that there is a polarization between rural America and urban America right now. For example, the country people are far more likely to hunt and kill animals for sport, and that's fine. But they far estimate the risk of guns and accidental shootings and the risk involved. They took a poll and have taken data. Voters within 10 miles of a Whole Foods or an Apple computer store voted Democratic by more than a 30-point margin. Those close to a Cracker Barrel, Bass Pro Shop, or Hobby Lobby voted Republican by 20 points.
I like Hobby Lobby.
But they said the strongest factor separating city and country people was simply population density. Show me population density and where people are packed together. There's pretty high population density right here where we are this morning. Also look at a map of the 19th century rail connections, and it looks like a map of where the Democratic voters are concentrated today. Next slide. Education. Most people don't want to hear this, but the city dwellers are more educated than the country folk. It's not that the country folk are any different intellectually, genetically, but it's just that the businesses and the job opportunities are in more concentrated areas. If you are a good orthopedic surgeon or a top-notch lawyer, you're not going to practice in a little 2,000 person town in Oklahoma. There just isn't an opportunity there. If you're an aerospace engineer, you're not going to live in Western Kansas. You're going to be in Denver or the LA Basin or Cape Canaveral area or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you may have to live in Huntsville.
That's right.
So it's just that the educated people.
They change their vote.
Yeah, or you don't find a top medical center. Like I think Baylor University is renowned. The Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic. You won't find them in some small town out in the middle of nowhere, simply because the people, the talent have to be there. Silicon Valley will not ever move to Death Valley. You know, the smart people, the really super educated people have to go if they want employment opportunities to the cities. So the cities collect more of the intellectual talent, just a fact. That's a map of the highest degree of educational attainment. That's not the number of people who've got degrees and advanced training, but it's the percentages. And where the cities are is where you have the high percentages of the more educated people.
Ron, is the green highly educated?
Yes. The green is the highly educated, and we can see the Colorado Front Range does pretty darn well.
Whereas the gray is the flyovers.
And you can pick out the cities right away. You can spot Austin and Houston, St. Louis, Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't get Arizona though, because it's northern Arizona.
Well, it's my counties. Maybe the counties are so large that.
Yeah, that's Prescott and Flagstaff.
And Flagstaff.
Okay.
It's kind of rather large as well.
Next slide. This is the percentage of the population with less than 9 years of education. So this is people that have only made it to the 8th grade in terms of education. Red is the deep maroon red is the highest percentage. That's where you've got 30 to 56% of people with just 8th grade education. And we can see the Texas border. We can see poor Kentucky and West Virginia pop out there. A lot of the southern states don't do terribly well in percentages of people with 8th grade and above. Next one.
What's the date on that map? Did you have a date?
I can get it for you. All right, so again, it's the cities that collect the really talented people. Businesses need large teams with a variety of expertise. Lockheed Martin out here. In fact, my son's in the aerospace industry down in Colorado Springs, and he was at the branch of their company in Melbourne, Florida, and he told them, we need to recruit or move more of our company to Colorado. That's where we can get the talent. That's where the people want to live, the educated people. Just a note, 23 cities in the United States make up half of the GNP. And the six largest cities make up 25% of the US economy. That shows where the jobs are. And the cities attract much more skilled and educated workforce in the countryside. And that means because right now, the more educated people are, it's a fact, strongly skewing Democratic right now. And hence the cities are showing higher and higher concentrations of Democratic supporters.
So that's why Colorado is so Democratic.
The higher education, yeah, is doing it. Next one. You need to move quick here. Race and divide. Quick note, there are far more white people without higher education in the rural areas. That's obvious. And there are far more non-white and highly educated people in the, I should have said urban areas on that slide. Next slide. The liberal marinade. So you're in danger of turning into a liberal if you do the following. Living in a big city, and the reason might be you got to learn to get along with hundreds of thousands of people, and that makes you realize that you need government-funded commons, streets, subways, garbage collection, water treatment facilities, et cetera, et cetera. And you're intensely interconnected, so you got to learn to meet and work with and live in dense communities where there's a lot of people. So the more liberal philosophy tends to do better when you're in that environment. Next one. Religiosity. As of 2021, the share of Christians in the U.S. fell to 63%, and those with no religious affiliation is now closing in on 30%. Next one. And here's the religiosity by state. These are people that profess to have, or profess and do, tend to be heavily involved in church, religious activities, and it's interesting. Okay. There's next one. Okay. The author does point out the danger of in rationalizing. He points out the story of Jephthah. This is out of Judges 11:30. Jephthah led some Israelites against the Ammonites and vowed that if successful in battle, when he went home, he would sacrifice to God whoever first came out the door of his house to greet him.
Ouch.
Well, first out was his beloved and only child, his daughter. And the Bible implies he went through sacrificing it. It just shows the blindness of using blind religious creeds to guide your actions. And that was a case shown in the book. Next one. All right, Joel Osteen made the statement. The facts may tell you one thing, but God is not limited by the facts. Choose faith in spite of facts. Oh boy.
Okay.
And of course, Neil deGrasse came back with that one. I don't even know where to start unpacking this much stupid. Okay, next one. Okay, who's that? Elmer Fudd. Quiet. I'm hunting wabbit or rationalizations. And here we're closing our little talk this morning. Politicians, pundits, or an ambitious entrepreneur will rise to fill the need for rationalizations. Again, it's your PIMS comes up with all kinds of rationalizations to justify what you think to do. The point of rationalizations is to sound reasonable rather than be true. So either true or false stories will do. And there's a statement, there's a difference between sound reasoning and reasons that sound good. Next one. Behavior of political party elites. Donald Trump's biggest insight was to realize that there's literally no limit to the lies, scandals, and crimes that people will accept as long as they are done in service of us versus them.
Big state,
Us versus them.
deep state.
Yeah. And we'll wrap up here. We've got one or two more. They found that fact checks have little impact. They found that people trying to make decisions weren't swayed much by fact checks. They say despite all the money poured into the 2024 presidential election, the political advertising had little effect. Political messaging was mostly used as rationalization for how people had already decided to vote. So the biggest effect of a lot of the political advertising was to just give people support for their rationalizations in terms of what they'd already decided to do.
So it didn't change much.
Yeah.
Does anybody here think the election would have swung differently if there was absolutely no political advertising?
No point.
And yet, yeah,
I think because the election was so close, that there have been particular ads that helped sway people who might have been in the middle, like the one that showed the tall transgender woman playing basketball on a girls' team. That has been cited numerous times on CNN as something that could have been responsible for changing, or like Ron says, backing up the rationalization of others.
okay. And let's conclude with this one. The author says, well, how can you change people? He says, use what he calls the truth sandwich. Start by stating the truth as plainly as possible. Then explain why the false information is incorrect. And then come back to the bottom part of the sandwich is stating the truth again. So it's truth, then state why the other position is incorrect, then come back with the truth. He said, you got a chance with this to maybe move people a little bit. He said also inoculate people against falsehoods by spreading the truth beforehand. Try to get the truth out there before the falsehood even gets spread. And then, of course, try to see how you would see the world if you were in this person's position. Try to wear the other person's moccasins. Try to perceive how they're seeing the world, and maybe you can change things. And then finally, he says, go deeper than facts. Cite a personal story. He said it's really powerful if you can cite maybe something out of your life or friends or your family, or something you saw in your 8th grade class or something. And when you make it personal, it has a better chance of sinking in as opposed to just putting up a graph.
I've used that third one to try to talk to people about their perception that Trump has been picked on since he was elected in 2016. That immediately Nancy Pelosi was calling for his impeachment because that's their view, that he's been picked on for 8 years from the very beginning. They didn't give him a chance. And so I've tried to use that number 3 to understand why that's part of the understanding of where they're coming from.
Okay. All right, I've yacked too much again, but let's get some more commentary from the peanut gallery here. Thoughts? I found this study, preparing it, helped me just not just on politics, but just everything in general. It's helped me say, everything you do in life, think more about, why do I feel this way? Why is my emotion going this direction? Why have I accepted this? Not against central truths, but at least to look at yourself and your actions and to evaluate, yeah, maybe I should change here. It's time for me to change.
I want to give our Zoomers a chance to comment or a question without feeling like they're interrupting us. Do you have anybody on Zoom want to make a comment? Go right ahead, please.
Yeah,
Or
I have a question or a thought.
Grant.
Many times, and I've heard this story many times, a bank robbery, and they ask all the people that were there, let's say 10 people, and 10 people will have a different description of the bank robber, every one of them. So what I look at things is that it's all of your perspective of how you look at things. And a lot of that looks to me like based on things like urban versus rural, those kinds of things. And so how people perceive things in different areas is the reason why they think the way they do. And you can all see the same exact thing happen, but you'll all get 10 different stories. That's just a thought I kind of come up with when we were talking back about the fourth or fifth slide that you had there. That's about all I had.
Which to me says, what is truth? You know, I mean, if that many people have opinions about things and perspectives of how they see things, how do we seek truth? You
Well, that's
know?
what surveillance cameras are for.
True, yeah.
Of course, there's different ways of looking at things. Certain central facts are indisputable. Steve and Vicki are in class this morning. That is a fact. And so if you're making an argument saying they're not here in class, Yeah, there's some more. But now if we're starting to talk about perceptions, I like Alice's necklace. That's really cool. Goes well with that sweater. That's a perception, but there's room, there may not be somebody that doesn't see it that way. But you have, in my opinion, as an engineer, you have to accept, I call it incontrovertible. Once you come up with enough evidence, facts to nail something down, it's no longer an opinion. It's no longer an opinion whether you guys are in class this morning. It's a fact. It's truth.
Things that I think is happening is people's different points of view on what morality is. For example, someone may believe that it's okay to sexually assault a woman, right? My morality says that's not right. So I think what's happening is Trump is a convicted felon, but to some people, that's okay with their morality. You see what I'm saying? So I think that there's a real big deal going on with what is morality, what is right, what is wrong.
Well, it comes back to rationalization. In the instant, in the example you used, they're going to rationalize that the Department of Justice or the city of New York came out against him.
Yeah.
And it was a he said, she said, where maybe she was acquiescing to that. They're going to come up with rationalization.
It goes back to what you were talking about.
And it's also relative values. Often, and let me give an example. In the state of Colorado, we unfortunately, like every other state, have cases, rare, where children are badly abused, psychologically, sexually, mentally, physically. And there's no doubt in my mind, we absolutely have to have a good health and human services system set up in Colorado to come in and protect and save as many of these children we have. And so in the budget, if you cut almost all the money to support, child social workers and stuff, some people say, quote, the heck with them. I want my tax refund. I don't want my tax money spent on helping those, So there's where it's value system. And I sometimes almost cry when I see where people stack their values. And often, far too often, my money bin, people, say, that's going to cost me $3. I'm not going to stop pouring my raw sewage in the,
The same with the war on Ukraine. Some people are going, we need that money here for me.
Yeah. I want the money.
Them.
After all, it's just some people far away. I don't care about that. My money's more important. I'd rather have $5 more cut off my income tax bill than to help somebody else.
The most interesting thing to me in the rise of Trump has been that my friends who are Trump supporters say they know that Trump lies and is a bad person, but that's not as important as his positions on policies. He's going to reduce abortion. He's going to stop immigration. That's all more important than him being a bad person.
It goes to that morality again.
Yes, it goes to morale, but they got to pick one or the other, and they say his good outweighs his bad to them.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
I like what
Preparing to do that to some degree with Democratic candidates too. We know that they're not perfect either, but with Trump, it's just magnified. Everything's magnified, the choices.
I think most of us think we were pretty good kids, but it's sometimes interesting to think back on your early childhood, how your undeveloped moral codes and stuff allowed you to rationalize the way of some things, you know, that, or even maybe your behavior in junior high school or something. Yeah. It's sometimes, it's not funny, but it's interesting. Some of the bizarre rationales, even adults come up with to justify what they're doing.
I was thinking earlier when we were talking about the socioeconomic situation with more highly educated people. Isn't there a trend right now that a lot of young people are choosing to go into fields that are not college, but trades?
Mhm.
So would that change the outlook of everything if, because those are labor jobs as opposed to sit behind a desk type thing? Would that lead more people with education into a different bracket? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I understand your question. I think it depends on if they go to a trade school where they meet a lot of different people and of different ages, sexes, races, religions, that will tend to open them up. Or even if they start digging into books and reading a little more broadly. Actually, right now they're finding that the U.S. military is actually doing a pretty darn good job of opening up guys that go into the Army that are maybe from a deep South rural area. They have some prejudices thrown in with some people of other races. They find usually when they work with them, train with them for a few months, they radically change their views.
Brotherhood.
Yeah, they find that they change. So I think the same thing would occur on the trade schools.
To me, I think a lot of even highly educated people that are coming out of urban areas are choosing trades as opposed to the whatever you would want to call it at the higher levels. It's a rat race. People just, are having a really struggle with the competitiveness and everything. So they're choosing another way, and there's money in that.
Right.
But it just makes me wonder if it would change the dynamic overall, possibly.
Okay.
I have a question for Steve.
Yeah, Riggs.
What role does social media or the media in general play in terms of educating people one way or the other? What are your thoughts on that?
Big question.
Let's take the whole hour for that. Riggs asked me because I'm a retired newspaper reporter and editor. Used to be that the role was to educate people with the facts and give them both sides, and people accepted that and recognized that role, but that's changed in the last 30 years since the internet, as you know, Riggs. And so today there's much less of that commitment to giving both sides, and now it's more preach to your tribe on your cable news channel, and don't educate them, just tell them what they want to hear. So you got, sad to say, but it's true.
Well, and what role do the oligarchs play at this point with X and some, their ability to basically own those companies and so forth? What role does that play?
Find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
And yeah, X, they don't see their role as being to really educate people. It's more to
Make money.
express your opinion and make money, right?
So where are we gonna go to get the truth?
Where do you all like to go? I like the New York Times, recognizing that it's liberal in its editorial. section.
So you think it'll remain the same?
Wall Street Journal,
PBS News.
PBS,
Yeah.
BBC.
DW.
Yeah, the German news is
Yeah.
interesting for European, those kind of things, so.
Yep. You know, Steve, to Rick's question, I think that's half the reason that TikTok went dark last night. Because in addition to collecting data, there was an assumption that there was a lot of, selective persuasion being created through the algorithms that would impact how people view issues or anything, markets. So I think it's very significant.
What does Canada think about that TikTok banning?
You know what? I think that they were in favor of it.
I have a question about that. Can Trump change that?
Yeah, it's already been changed. It's already been changed. They're going back live tomorrow morning.
Oh,
So
my
they
goodness.
can
What?
broadcast, so yes, it's going back live tomorrow morning.
90
So
days,
they
right?
can- No, yeah, for 90 days
For
at
90
least,
90 days.
so they can broadcast the inauguration.
That's
bad.
What does because I thought like Nikki Haley was arguing against TikTok and that was, or there was some social media platform she was.
Yeah.
Railing against in the debates, and someone else was
Okay.
too. I thought it was TikTok. I might not be remembering that right. So what's the big whoop about TikTok? That it's,
propaganda.
no, it's propaganda, but certainly all of other
It's
stuff.
the collection of
But
information.
Well, yeah,
Could go back to the Chinese.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Beth and I talked about this and she felt that Trump can't do that.
He can, he already has.
I don't know.
Executive action.
He's not even.
Executive action.
Executive order.
Executive order.
Presidential executive order.
He goes president.
We're about out of time, folks. But Riggs, good question. Thanks for bringing that up. We're gonna do an hour on that sometime soon too. Go back into all these things about media today and social media and TikTok and what is going on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you,
Okay.
Ron, for a good presentation.
Okay.
And hope everybody has a warm day.
Thank you. Bye.
Article about scientists.
Just going to the Murray
Oh.